So I went out for a run and came back home and felt like I had to talk about something. And it's something that that's been pretty deep for me for many years. And in respect to philosophy and personal philosophy on life, it's pretty close to me in respect to how the media has influenced me in terms of movie being born to my life, and then not just a movie, but a movie adapted from a novel by a very famous and well-known, renowned Chinese author. He might be Taiwanese now, I'm not really sure, or from Hong Kong, I'm not very sure. I have to research it. His name is, but you can't miss him. His name is Jin Yong. Jin Yong, Jinyong, and he wrote many books, particularly about ancient China involving wuxia. Wuxia is the term Wuxian, the term for like swordsplay and swordsmanship. Those stories surrounding that from ancient China. It's a big genre, and it's sometimes merges with fantasy, particularly nowadays in terms of gaming and anime. But for me, I've never been into anime very much or at all. It's always been the real, or the, I don't want to say real, but the movies that try to depict as close as possible reality, or as close as possible to the times back then, in terms of how they were then, as much as possible. The term real is probably a little bit kind of contested. So the name is 笑傲江湖. It literally translates to laughing among the currents of the big river or lake, or the deep waters, the torrents in the water, the tumultuous energy. But that kind of energy is actually in respect to laughing amidst the chaos of life in society. So jianghu doesn't just mean waters, tumultuous waters, but it refers to society, laughing amidst that, or looking beyond that and seeing the eagle eye perspective, or taking the high road, and not being drawn, or not being attached to be drawn back and again into that kind of heavy energy. So 笑傲江湖, and it's not, there are many versions that have been created, but this is the 2001 version. I was really young back then. My father, he was always also very connected to movies of wuxia nature from ancient China, whether or not they were just deeply about swordsmanship, or if they had some other storylines, plot lines in terms of more about historical figures. And one thing about Jin Yong, I think he also wrote a lot about either Qianlong, the Emperor Qianlong in the Qing dynasty, or his father, and his, in terms of this emperor in ancient China, he was really known for going local, just disguising himself as a lay person, and going out into villages and among the people, and just being with them and getting to know them. And he's associated with so many stories of his adventures in places that maybe he shouldn't have been, or found himself in, really fortunately. So he was really loved, I think, as an emperor, among the better loved emperors in Chinese history, ancient Chinese history, or classical culture. Anyway, so just wanted to talk about just the main thing would be like the love story hiding within a movie about just the nitty gritty, sometimes very ugly aspects of that kind of masculine energy in ancient China, where people want to be, the word is 天下第一, like the number one under the sky, or like the best at swordsmanship. So they would kill a lot of people in order to hold that title, you know, whether intentionally or not. But it's the storyline behind, or that the main point of it all is really to emphasize the Tao, or the way amidst the non-ways, I guess, regarding on how one should live one's life, and talking about the values that one holds dear, and what is most important at the end of the day, or amidst it all, what's the most important takeaway of why we're alive. So the central character, his name is Linghuchong, and he's played by Li Yapeng, a Chinese actor. So this was a 2001 series, and then there's another main character. Her name is Renyingying, or Shenggu, and she's known as the Holy Maiden of the Evil Sect. And she's played by Xu Qing, one of my favorite Chinese actresses. Xu Qing, XU, QING, and Yapeng, LIYAPENG. So those two actors playing these two characters who ultimately fell in love, and they were from very different upbringings, and it was like a miracle that they actually ended up finding each other and creating a kind of peace and love out of a lot of dissonance. So that sustaining relationship throughout the movie, which builds and culminates towards the end after a long battle between, being in terms of them being caught in people vying for power and trying to become number one under the sky, in terms of wuxia, being the ultimate warrior. It's a very sweet story. So they didn't know each other in the beginning, and then she comes in to save him quite a few times, and she's been always from the very beginning known as like a very onerous, frightening, little bit obscure character with really deft and like matchless swordsman skills. She could kill people from afar just like in a zap. But there is some scenes probably like accentuating that, maybe to create the aura around her. And he, being from Mount Hua, was always known as the good sect, or like the good amidst the good groups, and groups as in these schools of swordsmanship. They were bound to mountains in China, which are actually really far apart geographically, but I guess in the story they seemed to closer because they were connected and communicating with each other, and developing pacts and fighting among each other. So the mountains, I know a few, and like in Hengshan, Heng, Taishan, Tai, Huashan, Hua, and probably some other mountains I'm missing. So that, and then the place called Luoyang, Luoyang, which, if you know the poems by Li Bai, the poet Li Bai, Libai, he often went to Luoyang, and there's a lot of romanticism attached to that place, and in terms of like the Silk Road and tea houses, and writing poetry, finding brotherhood, brotherhood, finding like-minded people and being with one's, I guess you can call soulmates or soul brothers, especially in terms of the male side of camaraderie and that adventurous sense in ancient China. So anyway, so he was born he was an orphan, and then he was raised by the leader of Mount Hua, who embodied everything good, and so there they are in two different worlds. And what happens is there's this book of swords, like a swords play book, a very kind of like mysterious book, which if one should like ever find and study, could lead one to become the best in swords play, for all time. And this book was related to another book, which was tied to embroidery. So I guess you can say that the feminine aspect in that book, and then the more masculine part in this book. But they were both they both required, and at the end, I don't know if I want to give any spoilers, but they both required usually the man to like, how should I say this, like not circumcise himself, but like literally cut off his male parts to become a woman. Not a woman, like to the Chinese word is tai jie, or he would be like without the masculine aspect physically. So the books actually required one to do that. I'm not sure if any females practiced it. So anyway, so what happened was he was in Mount Hua, and then Renyingying, Shenggu, the holy maiden, she held a position, and they were both really young, probably in their 20s or 30s, and she held a position in the so-called evil sect, or Mojiao, which is actually the sun and moon sect, Zhiyue Shenjiao, and then she held a position there because her father, who went missing, was one of the great leaders of that sect, and was known for being really powerful. Him, along with his friend called Dongfeng Bubai, which translates to like a person who won't bow down from the east. Dongfeng Bubai, who was really then known as the most powerful in terms of achievement in swordsmanship skills, just like because what happened was he found the feminine aspect of those two swords playbooks, and he did actually, unbeknownst to many people, or the people who followed him, or the groups who warred with them, or who were scared of him, and amidst society, unbeknownst to everybody, he practiced and studied and found that book, and he castrated himself, and became more feminine as time went on, and had a whole setup up on a mountain with many rolls of yarn or like threads, and would do embroidery, and his swords play skills, they were tied intimately with embroidery and those skills of creating fabric and silk paintings and such. So he went missing because he was practicing in the mountains, and then he had a substitute who would like sit there for him inside the sect, the Sun and Moon sect, and everyone thought that was him. But so anyway, so and then I'm not sure if he locked his friend, which is Jin Yong, the Holy Maiden's father up, or no, I don't think he did, or maybe he had something to do with it. But Renyingying's father, the Holy Maiden's father, he went missing because possibly also due to this kind of power play. So he went missing, and the whole idea, the whole an ending thread in the beginning of the series was to find her father, and she the soft aspect of her, the soft side to her, which would come out in terms of housing many ducks inside her bamboo hut, and just loving animals in that way, and also her intention to find her father throughout, which she couldn't really voice amongst openly, because it would give her mystique away. She was always trying to find her father, and so these two lines of development between these two characters, and then they end up falling in love. But what really happens is she ends up falling in love with him, while he was really in love with his sister, not real sister, but like his the girl he grew up with, who was the Mount Hua, the leader of Mount Hua's daughter. And so I guess you can call it his peer, in terms of like and how do I say it, in studying like swordsmanship. So they studied together and they grew up together, and so he was in love with her, and she wasn't really in love with him. The energy and focus of wanting to be with him was veering away towards someone else. But he was deeply in love with her 小师妹, his 小师妹, and 师妹, it translates to little sister, under one teacher. And so Shenggu, initially the Holy Maiden, Shenggu or Renyingying, these three names, same person. She fell in love with him because she saw, all this good in him when she was trying to, when she visited the Mount Hua area, and though she's very well known, she disguised herself as an old lady, and disguised herself as an old lady because she wanted to find like a zither, book, a zither and xiao, which is like a one instrument flute, bamboo flute book, written by her teachers, who also, due to the societal grievances between light and dark, her teacher being like the dark, from the dark, and the Mojiao from the evil sect, and then he befriended somebody who wanted to quit, so-called quit society, and he was actually like a leader of some sort in like a mountain, I think, and then nobody agreed to their friendship, and nobody agreed to them leaving together, just not bothering anyone and wanting to be together and create music together, these two men. And it ultimately led to the death of all the family of the light aspect man and the dark aspect man. He also perished, I think by his own means, and because he saw that there was no way to be in friendship and leave society and not be part of the light and dark war that was going on. Those times, these kinds of times, and so the music book was theirs, and they passed it on to her, but they actually passed it on to him, Linghuchong, the main character, by some threads of development. It ended up with him, because he was saved by them a few times, and him being the main character, things ultimately center around the main character. So the book was with him actually, and then like she wanted the book, but she couldn't tell him directly that she wanted it and give herself away. So she dressed up as an old lady and was in a bamboo hut and built a bamboo hut, and had like another teacher with her, and so she fell in love with him because she saw all the good in him, while trying to pry for the book and try to get it from him. Ultimately, I think he did end up giving it to her under the guise of thinking she was a really wise and artistic old elderly woman with wonderful zither musicianship and wonderful singing voice, and he fell in love with her as an older woman, when he didn't know that she was really the person that he knew from the evil sect, so-called evil sect, called the Holy Maiden. So anyway, it's complicated. So I'm not gonna say the whole plot line, obviously, but so they're drawn in all these currents of energy, and so once it's revealed that she is who she is, he decides to actually help her look for her father, which is, wow, wonderful. Even though it would create so many problems for him, and like he's not supposed to even deal with the so-called evil sect and being from Mount Hua. So actually he's kicked out of Mount Hua by the leader there, and his relationship with his sister is disintegrates, even though he still loves her very much. And so gradually, though, I feel like he does grow to love the Holy Maiden, or maybe it was always there and deeper than the love for his sister, but just because he grew up with his sister, his teaching sister, his swordsman, ship school sister. It seemed to be that he loved her more. Towards the end, everyone's trying to vie for power, and then the man who was the most powerful under the sky, Dongfeng Bubai, the one from the east who wouldn't bow down, he actually is drawn into a fight along with Holy Maiden's father once he's found, and then he ends up dying, being killed by all the lot of them, because they wanted to prove that he wasn't the most powerful, but it took like 6 of them to defeat him as one person. So there's this battle scene where he's among his embroidery, and he's really actually becoming more feminine as time goes on, and actually what happens is he also is in love with somebody who's actually not the one taking his place in the sect, but the one who talks and leads everyone underneath the so-called puppet. And so he's in love with that man, who ultimately dies with him there because they can't not kill him because they're together. And so this kind of, like, in the end he dies trying to save his partner, and otherwise he wouldn't have died. he wouldn't have the final blow wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for saving his partner. So yeah, and then so that kind of deep love and integrated within the madness of trying to, like, one-upmanship, trying to be the best and most powerful, mighty of them all. It's just so that thread also echoed there. So in the end, there what happens is he starts, the main character learns from so many teachers and is passed down not only, the swordsman skills from a very, very famous, renowned, and respected, but just very mysterious, and later on he probably passed away. This man from Huashan also Mount Hua, this teacher of swords, of a particular kind of swords play skill. He probably his only student. He ended up teaching the main character because he saw so many good qualities in him in terms of being a great person, being really honest, doing his best to taking responsibility for himself, and being good to his peers and good to his teachers, and even though having a very wild streak and a little bit of a rogue streak, and liking to drink rice wine and finding himself with all the bad people, so-called negative people, actually learning a lot along the way, and, because he found himself in so many precarious and kind of questionable circumstances, and it's kind of like Chenlong, the emperor I was talking about from ancient China, who would go local. He mingled with so many. The main character also mingled with so many different people from all walks of life, and he, it was then that he had so many friendships and knew so many people who would speak for him. And so towards the end, he had all these skills, but also a lot of, he also had a lot of baggage in terms of physical ailments that came with these skills. And so everyone started seeing him as the best in swords play under the sky, and they wanted to kill him. They also wanted to kill the Holy Maiden's father, who actually never made an attempt to hide the fact that he wanted to be number one. So the Holy Maiden's dad, even though, looking upon the main character as potentially his son-in-law later on, also wanted him killed. So in the end, they were battling out, and what happens is the leader from Mount Hua, who was the teacher, and I guess you could say dad, the main character, who brought him up and taught him skills, and later on kicked him out of the school of Mount Hua, Hua. He was cast as a very good character in the beginning, a flat character, but then developed into a very complicated character who wasn't actually very good, and found a way to get his hands on, after much bloodshed, get his hands on the masculine part of the swords play book, that one book that could lead you to be the best in swords play. So he actually found it after a lot of strife, and then he also castrated himself, and he grew apart from his wife, and then started to become quite dark. Didn't care for his daughter anymore, and also wanted the main character dead by the end of it. But I wanted to battle with the Holy Maiden's dad and Holy Maiden's father first, and that was the scene towards the end where they basically killed each other. But the main character had a step in, Linghuchong, the main character, he had a step in towards the end of it, because he saw that, he was drawn into the battle, but anyway, they ultimately killed each other, with the main character just, standing there wounded. But so all of this for what? So what I didn't mention is he was also given, because he has so many ailments, many people try to help him, and this was also among these people, were like some questionable characters from Luoyang, from the local area, the villages, but also there is this temple called Shaoningshi, Shaolin Temple, which is known in the West for their karate skills or those skills in kung fu. Is that the word? Kung fu. Their kung fu skills. But in the book, the Shaolin Shi also being a place of refuge for monks and for the main character himself, and he stayed there. He stayed there for a period of time, and also was given was endowed with their teachings, which they never teach anybody else. Would never ever have taught, I think, to a lay person, or just freely like that. But they why did they taught it to him? Because they also saw, I guess they on one hand saw the good in him, another they decided to save his life using this breath technique called yin-yang, this kind of inner breath technique, and they after certain currents they also passed it on to him, so he had that with him too. So this kind of Buddhist and Taoist theme, this thread of just I guess you could call goodness that runs through the movie, not only in respect to watching how the main character deals with the other characters in the book, and how much love he has, and not just love, but how much he just wants to not be a part of it, and he actually just probably wants to drink a little bit of wine and not be a part of it and just have fun, and but he's always drawn into these like power plays between people and different groups wanting to kill him, and he trying to protect people, his family, the people he loved or loves. He was drawn to not kill, but like to duel with various sides. So, but he actually really, you can see within the relationship between him and the Holy Maiden, they despite of their positioning, they both didn't want to be a part of that kind of society. They both wanted out, or they both wanted to distance themselves and create a space of peace and love and understanding and respect of who they were. And their relationship ultimately testifies to that fact, and the fact that they could even get together and love each other, develop a deep bond with each other, which everybody was able to see by the end. It was not just surprising and shocking, but also so endearing, and like if you watch it, it would fill you with hope, and the kind of wonderful feeling that miracles do sometimes happen, and that love is always worth it. But whether or not whoever you love loves you back or whatnot. But so that kind of exemplifying energy in a relationship was really endearing to watch, heartwarming to watch. And so neither of them wanted anything to do with becoming number one, even though they also had very high skills in swordsmanship, mainly in the end to defend themselves. And so they ultimately do, as like an ending theme, they leave society, and they both have that music a zither songbook then, because they know who one another, they know who the other person is by the end. So in sharing that music and song book, the ending scene is them playing the piece which killed their teachers earlier on, and but which now then at the end carries on to sustain them, and hopefully not replaying the battles of the past, and hopefully from a higher ground, and transcending all that. So in the end, they play their piece, and that's how the movie ends. But so ultimately, you can feel that, oh wow, the Tao, the symbol for the Tao, the yin-yang symbol, which was developed later on, I think, after Lao Tzu's teachings, and probably then associated with Daoism later on, now associated with Daoism in the modern world. And now when you talk about Daoism, you see that yin-yang symbol of the two, I think like they call them fish, or some kind of water species. There's a dot of black inside the white area, and then within the half part of the dark, there's a dot of white, and then within the other half of the whiter part, there's a dot of a darker color, and so they entwine. And what it means is like the old adage where, when things get bad, it's not always going to be that bad. There's something good in it. Or when things are too good, be careful, because life is always full of change, and there's a seed of so-called positive, and in the seeming bigness of the negative, and there's also a seed of the negative in the so-called seeming positive. And ultimately, is there positive and negative in the ultimate sense beyond our relative human nature? Well, universally, maybe from various vantage points, some parts of the positive is negative, and some parts of the negatives, some parts of the positive is negative, and some parts of the negative is positive, and this a never-ending play of forms. And even though there is the dark that we recognize, and there is the light that we recognize, but to know that everything is made up of both, and you can't be completely light or completely dark, because they require each other structurally in order for this universe to exist, or in order for our understanding of what we know as the world to exist. So yeah, this entitled with Buddhist concepts of emptiness, and so the thread of Buddhism throughout it also, from Shaolin. I just appreciated the whole movie, and it was beautifully created. And Jin Yong, before he passed away, he told the Xuqing, the character, the actress who acted the Holy Maiden, that she was probably what he envisioned his character to be when he wrote the book. And so when these actors were acting out this series, and under the really good producer of Zhang, I forgot his name, the producer of the series. Let me think, what's his name? Anyway, so I think I have like Zhang, his last name, but ultimately they acted while learning swordsmanship from teachers, and used real iron blades. The swords were all real. The sound effects were added, some of them on later on, but the swords were real. And then they also went to the places that they went to, the Mount Hengshan, Heng, with that temple built by, I think, a monk with his bare hands. I can't remember his name now, but that, like, perched upon the cliffs, that monastery like structure with the beautiful temples and stairs and bridges, that was real, and the clouds and the mountains were real, and just the scenery in that movie was just some And I was looking at some YouTube comments, and because not many people know this this movie in my daily life, and some would say it was a masterpiece. They come back to watch it. I feel the same way, and even though I found it when I was really young, I can't forget the series, and it's always really new whenever I watch it. It's the best movie. It's the best series ever. It's not a movie. It's a series. It's the best thing I've ever seen, maybe ever. Not just in terms of Chinese series. But yeah. Okay.